This simulation shows guests walking through a multi-level attraction that contains numerous points of interest guests may experience. This simulation was created to understand what the attraction's operating capacity was, as well as to identify pinch points and bottlenecks in the experience, and to see if any changes in the design would help increase capacity and/or reduce congestion. Guests enter a queue outside to go through security. They then enter the building where their ticket is scanned. Once in the building, guests can start experiencing what the attraction has to offer. They also have access to a retail location at the right and a cafe on the left. When guests want to enter the full experience, they use the main elevator towards the center of the building. This elevator drops guests off on either the third or fourth floor of the exhibit, depending on crowd levels. Guests then spend their time navigating throughout the story of the experience. These guests were assigned varying levels of engagement or a specific guest type as they walked throughout the exhibit. Waiters really only hit on the main things and spend the least amount of time in the exhibit. Swimmers represent your average guest, seeing a typical amount of the experience and spending the normal amount of time in the attraction. Divers dive deep into the experience and see most of what it has to offer, as well as spend the longest amount of time in the experience. A guest's length of stay at each point of interest in the attraction, as well as a whole, is directly related to its guest type. The various colored blocks throughout the attraction represent different points of interest defined as follows. Attractors, or the yellow blocks throughout the experience, represent points of interest that guests would experience for a relatively short amount of time, and really only one group can see it at a time. Multi-interactives, which are represented by the orange blocks throughout the experience, are points of interest that guests would experience for a longer amount of time, and multiple groups can experience it at the same time. Single interactives, which are represented by the blue blocks, are POIs that guests would experience and actually interact with for a longer amount of time, and only one group can experience it at a time. Main interactives are represented by the green blocks, are points of interest that are a popular attraction guests would queue for to get to experience. Extended interactives are the pink blocks, which are points of interest that multiple groups can experience at the same time, and guests can stay for a longer amount of time, like a movie clip or a projection show. On the right hand of the screen, you can see some metrics that are tracked. In addition to these displayed here, we track metrics during experimentation. Operational metrics like instantaneous guest counts for the venue as a whole, each floor of the exhibit, and each individual room at various times in the model are recorded. Wait times for operational steps like security, ticket scanning, coat check, ordering food, and purchasing merchandise are tracked as well, along with the number of people in line for each of those operational steps. The point of interest utilization was also tracked throughout the day to determine when and how often each point of interest was being experienced. Guest experience metrics were tracked like guest per caps or how many POIs a guest got to experience, how long guests were in the venue, and areas where congestion occurred. After guests experience the attraction, they then return to the first level of the exhibit, where again they can either grab food at the cafe or shop in the merchandise location, and then they exit from the attraction.